Ever since the beginning of the game, there have always been brawler trios, which is obviously a group of 3 similar brawlers. There are multiple ways that are determined, and today we'll be going over all the full trios to see how they came to be, so let's just get right into it. First up, let's actually look at why it even is trios and not like duos or squads. Well, the main reason for that is because Brawl Stars started as a game in which there were only solo and trio game modes. So the trios are basically like different teams of brawlers that more so exist in the lore of the game rather than the actual gameplay. However, it was still interesting. But anyways, let's actually get into the trios, with the first one being the Ranger Ranch trio. This consists of Shelly, Spike, and Cole, and all of them share a similar Wild West theme. Cole and Shelly are both Rangers and are both pretty similar as they shoot with guns, with Shelly using a shotgun and Cole using revolvers. And then you have Spike, who is a cactus, and that obviously fits into the Wild West theme, but he is also seen as the sidekick of Cole and Shelly, and all of them live at the Ranger Ranch, which is really where this trio comes from. Next up, we have the Gold Arm Gang trio, which consists of Sam, Belle, and Pearl. Now, this also fits well with the Wild West theme, and this trio is basically the enemy of the Rangers, since they're a notorious gang. But this is what I'd say is one of the most interesting trios in the game, as it is based off of real life. There used to be 2 people named Sam and Belle Starr, and they were married in real life and actually used to commit crimes in the 1800s, which is like in a Wild West theme. And they had a daughter who was named Pearl, so that's obviously where this trio comes from, and it is really just very interesting and unique. But next up, let's go with the tropis gang trio, and this consists of Bull, BB, and Crow. This is obviously another gang like Gold Arm. However, it's not quite as interesting, since so far it doesn't seem that they really do any crimes. They all just really hang out at the diner, and that's about it. They really are pretty mysterious and are all kind of like gothic in the sense that they wear dark clothing with their default skins. You can think of them as a gang that acts tough but doesn't really do anything. But let's switch it up for the next one and go with the Mexican Entertainers trio, and this consists of El Primo, Poco, and Amber. All of these are pretty bright brawlers, and they all do some sort of entertainment. El Primo is a pretty popular wrestler and is in a style that originates from Mexico. Poco is a musician, and he is also obviously very Mexican themed. Then you have Amber, who is a performer that really just plays a lot with fire, and I suppose she got grouped into this trio for the entertainment factor. So this is obviously a pretty cool trio, and another similar one is the Stunt Show trio, which has Stu, Janet, and Bonnie. Stu is a brawler that has been doing stunts for a very long time, and he is interesting because he obviously only balances on one wheel. Janet and Bonnie are both sisters, but Janet being the older and more experienced one that's better at performing stunts, and Bonnie is just a little sister who is getting into doing stunts but obviously needs help from Janet a lot of the times. So this is another entertainment trio, which is pretty cool. But next up, we have the Townsfolk trio, which consists of Barley, Piper, and Byron. This trio exists because each of these brawlers has a job in the town. So Barley is obviously a bartender, Piper is a baker, and well, Byron is a bit interesting. He is one of the most controversial brawlers as a trio because he doesn't exactly seem to fit in. Most people believe that he is there because he is like a merchant that sells stuff, which will kind of be like a shop or business, but the exact reason isn't super clear. But anyways, let's move on to the gift shop trio, and this includes Griff, Edgar, and Colette. Griff is the owner of the gift shop, which seems to be a failing business. Edgar is just a normal employee there who doesn't really like his job, and Colette is like a big customer there as she has to collect all sorts of stuff from the gift shop. So this is definitely one of the more well-defined trios, and before the addition of Griff, people had thought that Byron was the owner of the gift shop. However, that would obviously be untrue, but it was still interesting. But anyways, let's now move on to the arcade trio, and this consists of 8-Bit, Rico, and Brock. This one makes a lot of sense because 8-Bit is one of those shooter arcade machines, Rico is a gumball machine which is commonly found at arcades, and Brock is just a massive gamer, and he would also obviously be found at an arcade. So this is a pretty easy trio to figure out and logically makes a lot of sense. But next up, we have the Shaman tribe trio, and this consists of Bo, Nita, and Leon. All 3 of these really represent some sort of animal that you can find in the wild, and they also use relatively primitive attacks. Bo obviously uses a bow and arrow, and he represents an eagle, eagle, and he is also just known to have lived in the jungle for a while. Nita clearly represents a bear, and she even has a bear as a part of her super, which is the main thing that puts her in this trio. And then for Leon, well, he represents a chameleon and also is a close range brawler that uses spinning blades to attack. But next up, we have the Junker family trio, and this consists of Pam, Nani, and Jessie. Now, Pam and Jessie are mother and daughter, and both of them are kind of technical as they like to work at the junkyard and just make stuff or tinker around with stuff. And then Nani is a nanny for Jessie, which is why she is a part of this trio. But next up, we have the Undead trio, and this consists of Frank, Mortis, and Ems. Frank is basically like Frankenstein, so it makes sense how he is undead. And then you have Mortis, who represents a vampire, and he's also a mortician by profession, so there's a clear connection there. And then Ems is just a niece of Mortis, and she also just is kind of like a mummy with the bandages. But next up, we have the Brawlywood trio, and this one includes Lola, Miko, and Gray. All three of these are pretty different from each other, however they also obviously relate back to Brawlywood. Lola is like the main actress over there, and she is also shown to have a big ego. Miko is really just a sound guy that works behind the scenes, however he does go on camera a lot and also just has a big ego and doesn't seem to be a pleasant guy to be around. And then as for Gray, well, he is kind of cool as he is an actor, but he does it for the older black and white silent films, which is interesting. But overall, this trio does make a lot of sense. But next up, let's go with something similar, which is the Starr theater trio, and this is made up of Fang, Buster, and Macy. Fang is here because he just watches a ton of movies at the theater and is fully absorbed in them. Buster actually works at the movie theater, and he did steal one of the projectors from there. And then with Macy, well, she is a bit interesting as she doesn't exactly fit too well. Her occupation in the game is a safety coordinator, which obviously doesn't make sense for a theater. However, her hair does look a lot like popcorn, so I suppose that is really what makes her a part of this trio, which is definitely a little more interesting. But anyways, next up we have the Pirates trio, and this contains Penny, Daryl, and Tick. Penny is really like the main pirate themed brawler as she has an eye patch and she overall just themed around pirates. Daryl actually has like two things about him that make him a good fit for this trio. First of all, he does have a pirate's hat and does technically work as a pirate, but the other thing is that he is essentially a wooden barrel, and that really resembles what is on pirate ships, or really any ships back around when these types of pirates existed. And then as for Tick, well, he just follows Penny around, and that is how he ended up in this trio, despite not being very piratey himself. But next up, we have the Gem Miners trio, and this contains Dynamite, Jackie, and Carl. Dynamite uses dynamite to mine, since blowing stuff up is a pretty good way of going about things when it comes to mining. Jackie obviously uses her jackhammer in order to mine for stuff, and then Carl, just a mining robot who rides around in a minecart and uses pickaxe to mine. So overall, I say that this trio is one of the best when it comes to similarities between the brawlers, since all of them do pretty similar things, unlike some of the other trios we went over earlier. But next up, we have the Mystic Wanderers trio, and this contains Tara, Jean, and Sandy. And this one is really cool and just a nice trio in general because they all actually look alike physically. They are all pink themed and clearly do look like a trio. Tara is here because she has a card reader, which is obviously some mystical and mysterious thing. Jean is basically a genie, so obviously he fits right in, but Sandy is a little different. He is the younger brother of Tara, and there isn't exactly anything mystical about him. However, he is here because he just fits in with Tara. But next up, we have another color-coded trio, and that is the Superheroes trio, which is made up of Surge, Max, and Meg. Surge and Max are really like the main superheroes in the trio, and they are the most popular ones. Meanwhile, Meg is more in the background, and she is really like there to fix things when they go wrong. And all three of them are obviously very much red and yellow themed, which is pretty nice. But next up, we have the Snowtel trio, and this is made up of Mr. P, Gale, and Lou. This is a very winter themed trio, and the brawlers clearly reflect that. Mr. P is the owner of the Snowtel, which is obviously where the name comes for the trio, and Gale works at the Snowtel as a snow blower. And then you have Lou, who sticks around in the area to try and sell snow cones to people, so this is obviously a well-defined trio. But next up, we do have the Biology trio, and this is made up of Bee, Sprout, and Rosa. This is overall a nature themed trio, so obviously you have to have Bee, which represents bees, and then you have Sprout, who is a garden robot, and Rosa, who is a botanist, and all this is pretty cool as this is a pretty wholesome trio overall, unlike the next one, which is the Star Force trio. This is made up of Ruffs, Squeak, and Eve. Now this is a pretty strange one in my opinion, since all the brawlers are quite different. Ruffs is like the main guy since he is the commander of the ship and basically runs the show and is a serious character. But then you have Squeak, who's literally just made up of drug duel from Ruffs, which is just kind of gross. And then you also have Eve, who's like an alien, and it almost seems like her and Ruffs should be enemies, but they obviously aren't, so it is a little confusing and is one of the strangest trios. But finally, we have the Candyland trio, which recently just got completed with the addition of Barry. But the other two brawlers were Chester and Mandy. Now, this is basically like a candy shop, and Mandy runs the shop, and Chester comes into the trio as basically a big troll, and he is really targeting Mandy inside the candy shop, so I guess those go together. And then you have Barry, who works at the candy shop, so he is a pretty obvious addition. But with that, we have all the completed trios in the game. There are still a bunch that only have 1 or 2 brawlers, and we need to wait until more brawlers are added to fill those spaces. But I still do hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.